Back in the 50s and 60s, pheasant hunting reigned supreme in many parts of the Midwest, but especially Iowa. Opening day had a special status as several generations would gather at the family farm or other coveted properties to match wits with the king of the upland birds. These experiences remain with us for a lifetime and become memories from the field. Hey, tonight we have the pleasure of speaking with Steve Hornung. And Steve, you live over in Huxley, Iowa, as I recall, and
That's correct. That's correct.
Steve grew up in Iowa, and we're going to chat with him a little bit about what that was like learning to pheasant hunt in the early years over around Iowa Falls, which is, I believe, where you told me you were raised. Is that correct?
Yeah, I grew up in a farm south of Iowa Falls, a little town of Owasso, Iowa. No one's probably heard of Owasso, Iowa, but that's I went to school, elementary school there, and then we moved off the farm and went to Iowa Falls, and that's where I graduated from high school.
What now? Obviously, in that time period, in that part of Iowa, especially, I mean, pheasant hunting and bird hunting was a pretty big deal at that time, right?
So, yeah, I had an uncle. His name was Jerry Lyman, and he was an avid outdoorsman. And I was probably 7 years old. I became his bag boy, and I could remember going around the Wausau area where he hunted, and we would. It was amazing to me as a young kid, the numbers and flocks of pheasant that were in that area. I swear to God, one time there must have been 300 birds that got up in one group on a side hill of a grassy area, and I was just mesmerized by all the birds that came out of that area, and that was back in the 60s, early 60s, and it was just phenomenal, the number of birds we had in that area.
Now, was this private ground that he had access to? I would guess.
No, no, it was my uncle, another uncle,
Oh, okay.
Uncle Floyd Winters. He was the he rented that farm,
I got you.
and we had access to quite a bit of land in that area because he farmed and had acquaintances that would allow people to come and hunt
Sure.
and kill some birds.
Now,
Put them out of
did he utilize any dogs back then, or was that a little back when you really didn't need
my
one?
no, my uncle Jerry, he had a Visa,
Okay,
and he swore by the Visa,
you bet.
um, and he had um, he had a pretty good dog. I mean, it was a pointer, and it would he'd shoot the birds. The dog would go get them, and then he'd say, "Here, put this in the bag." So
Now,
I was the guy that carried the birds.
now the first time
It was
you
kind of
first time you experienced that whole scenario of the dog going and retrieving, what did you think? I mean, what was your thoughts about that?
I was just a young kid. I just thought it was amazing and awesome. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. That my uncle said, "Oh, we're going to go kill some pheasant." Well, I had no idea what that was at that time, what that would be, and I got kind of instantly, interested in the hunting scene. So he was my mentor as far as getting me involved in pursuing the pheasant.
And then how did your upland hunting evolve then over the years following that? I mean, obviously, as you got
Well,
older and got to carry a gun, how did that
yeah,
all come to be?
yeah, yeah. Well, my dad, his name was Paul Horning. He wasn't the famous football player, but he was a um, World War II veteran, and then he was anti-guns. But we, in our early days when we were growing up, we had BB guns. But the first real gun he gave to my older brother, an over and under, and we did a lot of target practice, and we had a lot of squirrels in our um, pasture, and so we shot several squirrels, and once in a while there was a creek, and we would go down and would see ducks land in the creek, and we would get a couple mallards now and then. But um, that was basically my when it was just me and my brother. That's what we did. We hung out with over and under, and you had to be a pretty good shot. You only
Yeah.
had one bullet, so one rifle bullet in a
You
410 shell.
now what do you
So
remember?
it was fun.
What do you remember about that gun? It was you said a 410.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was an over and under. Over and under. The top was a rifle, and the bottom was the uh, shotgun or the 410.
Okay.
And I often wonder where that gun went, because my brother he got married and went to Arizona, and I don't know where that gun went. Gun today would be worth a lot of money. I
Well,
I knew where it went.
well, if not, it would be worth a lot of memories. I mean that,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
I think one of the most outstanding memory is we went down the creek to get a duck, and my father said, my brother and I, "Oh, you guys will never bring home a duck." We got the mallard and brought it up to him, and we said, "Okay, now you got to clean it." He wasn't very happy, but he did it. So we had a duck. But that was probably one of my, when we were on the farm and we lived near Owasso, that was probably one of my favorite experiences, was bringing home the mallard duck and giving it to my father, and then having duck supper. That was
well,
great.
back then it was different times in that, I spent a lot of time on my granddad's farm growing up, and you kind of have made your own entertainment, and most of it
Oh,
involved
sure.
fishing rods and shotguns
Yeah,
in some
that's
respect.
true. That's true. Yeah. Well, we did a lot of fishing on the creek. We'd have poles, and we had a hole where we could catch um, no, I'm trying to say what it was, bullheads. We would catch the heck out of bullheads, and we would take some of those bigger bullheads, and we would have fish fries with them. My mother would fix them, so we cleaned them, and she would cook them up. So, that was another activity we did when we were on the farm. But then we moved to Iowa Falls, and I did a little more hunting with my uncle Jerry, and Uncle Jerry had 3 children, and he liked to go out and party at times, he and his wife. So I became the babysitter, and that's how I got my only, I mean, not my only first gun, but my first gun. And he gave me a bolt action 16 gauge, and boy, did I think, I had graduated from the 410, the BB gun, the 410, and now I have my own shotgun. I thought I was pretty smart,
So,
and that was when I was about 13 years old. So,
so you
but
got paid in babysitter. Instead of getting
yeah,
paid, you got
I
a
got
gun out of the deal. That was
yeah,
pretty good.
exactly. Yeah, it was a great
And
deal.
so I presume you used that gun for a few years
Oh
after
yeah,
that.
I used that gun until got married, actually, and I got married when I was 20, and and my wife gave me a 870 Remington pump
Oh yeah.
for a wedding
Well, there you
gift.
go,
Yeah, so
man.
that upgraded me quite a bit
Let,
from a
so
16 to a
so
Remington. I
so
still have that.
so when you're
Yeah, correct.
hunting with, kind of learning to hunt with your uncle when you were really young, and then as you got older, did you spend a lot of time? I mean, did you hunt with him? Would you say most every season up to a point,
Oh
or
yeah, yeah. Up until I got to be, I think he left Iowa Falls when I was 14 years old. So I got to hunt with him with a gun probably a couple years. And my uncle Floyd Winters, he had the farm, so we always had a place to hunt. That was our favorite place to go, was
yeah,
down near around Owasso, which
that's
is a very, very small little town.
where everybody knew everybody, I suspect.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
What do you have a favorite story of your uncle and your hunting with your uncle? Or were there any particular time you
Oh,
were with him that kind of stands out as a memory there?
Well, he was a good shot, and he had fancy guns, and I just was amazed how good of eye he had for the rifle or the shotgun. He could bring them down, and they would not run. He was a dead eye. He was a dead eye when it comes to shooting.
So usually he got his limit pretty quickly, I would say. And I don't imagine getting his limit was probably a challenge for him. Doesn't sound like.
No, it really wasn't. It really wasn't a challenge. If we got to found the birds, we were done shortly. It didn't take us a long time to get his bag full.
Now, at some point after
So
you moved into Iowa Falls and kind of got into high school, you started kind of hunting with some buddies, as I understand it.
yeah, that's when we did a lot of road hunting because we were involved in activities, and basically, um, we were in football in the fall and wrestling or basketball in the wintertime, and so uh, we would do a lot of road hunting. We'd just drive around the gravel roads around Iowa Falls, and we'd always find birds. Sometimes we would, get our limits, and sometimes we wouldn't. But I think one of the funniest things that we were doing, I think all four of us were together, Bob, Eddie, and Alan, and myself, and we'd shot this one rooster, and we just threw it in the back seat among down on the floorboard, and all of a sudden we got down down the road about I don't know a mile or so, and that bird came to life and it was flying around in a car. That was one of the funniest things I can remember is that bird flying around in that old '59 Chevrolet.
Everybody
Uh,
trying to get to
I
hold the
think
bird before the car went in the ditch or
everybody was
whatever.
trying to get a hold of it. Yeah, the birds are just flying around in the car, hopping around, flying around. The wonder we didn't have a wreck, but we got it and we wrung its neck and away we went. But that was a classic high school move,
So back
It was
so back
that was crazy.
back then, did you like us? Did you have the shotguns out in the car for after school to try
Oh
to get
no.
an hour or so in hunting, or how did
Oh
that
yeah,
work?
yeah. Oh yeah. We kept the car. We kept the guns in the cars in the trunk, of course. Nowadays, heck, you couldn't get by with that.
No,
There's
no, no.
the laws have changed so drastically that
So after
yeah, we would have
after
been probably
practice
running.
or after school, you'd try to get in another hour
Yeah,
hunt on
little
the way
road hunt.
home. Then,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, Eddie lived out in the country, and the other three of us lived in town. So um, we did a lot of road hunting when we were sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And then after that, we all parted ways and went to different colleges. But we always tried to get together and do some hunting during the holidays. But that was kind of rough too because when we went to college, Bob played football for the University of Northern Iowa, and I was at that time. I started playing at Ellsworth, and then so our time schedule was not very good
yeah,
um, during that college time, but we did get there together a few times, and we went to Maryville. Eddie went to Maryville College, and he had some friends that were um, from Creston, Iowa, which is in southwest Iowa, and we went down there a couple weekends a year if we could, and he would put us on quail, and that was a great time. And we'd go through a lot of shells chasing those quail. I mean, they come up fast, and you got to be quick shot. But like I said, Eddie was the best of the four of us. He was quick draw McGraw when it came to us
well, I'm sure he'll be glad to
all
hear
around.
that.
Oh yeah, he was quick. He was quick draw. Eddie's statement. I finally got my son hunting, and um, he was anti-hunting, anti-everything, and finally, um, Eddie would come down and say, "Wait, go with us, go with us." No, if I want to hunt, or if I want a bird, I'll go buy a chicken at the grocery store.
Yeah,
But um, then we had when we got out of college, I went to teach and coach at Adair Casey, and we had prime year hunting all the time, And the banker there was Tom Hay, and his daughter married a guy that was from Minnesota. And so he would bring his guys down, and they'd have dogs. They all had labs, and they would hunt. And finally, we got Bill to be the bag boy, just like I had,
Right.
25 years ago
Right.
before. And he finally got interested. He says, "But I got to get some decent clothes, and I got to get a gun." So that's how he got started. But the guys from Minnesota, they would come to Casey every year and hunt for pheasant, and they'd come down for a couple weekends every year. And then
What were the bird
we
populations
moved.
like out there at that time?
Oh, it was phenomenal. I
Yeah.
mean, when I got there in '79, and no, excuse me, '72. I left in '79, so we hunted that area for 7 years really hard, and we never hardly ever came home without our limit. And at that time, the birds are so plentiful. We had cars and trucks uh, coming into that area, and they would go to farmers, and most of the farmers would either rent it to them or just let them hunt. And they would be from all over Illinois, Minnesota, Indiana, Ohio. They were coming from everywhere just to hunt in that area because it was such good territory. There was a lot of set aside, a lot of hills and timber and stuff, and it was ideal setting for birds at that time.
So
And that's that was great hunting.
what kind of
Go
effect
ahead.
did pheasant opener or that time of year? What kind of effect did that have on the community from an economic standpoint? I mean, did that bring a lot of
Oh, it was
dollars into the community? I,
Oh yeah, well they were small towns. Adair's about at that time was maybe 1,000 people, and Casey was about 400 or 500. And the hotels that were in within a 20-mile radius of those two towns were always full. Restaurants were full, and of course the bars were full too.
yeah,
So it,
yeah.
it had a big impact. It had a very big impact on the economy there. And then of course um, it just kind of dried up. And the 80 was I don't know, a different time. Farmers were having a hard time. Lots of people went belly up and quit farming, and you know they took a lot of crop land or set aside away and put it into production with grains, and uh, the population just went downhill extremely.
Yeah.
And so the 80s was kind of a tough time, and the bank, as a matter of fact, the banker that I banked with, he had all kinds of land himself, but he ended up selling all of his land to make up for the farmers that
Yeah.
were having difficult times. So the the early the early '70s was the top time of the year, or the best spot to go in Iowa was Southwest Iowa. And like I said, it was crowded. I mean, if you didn't know the right people, you weren't going to get on
Yeah.
and be able to hunt. Well, luckily, I was a teacher and a coach, and I had all the kids, so I could about go
Yeah.
any place we
Yeah.
wanted.
And
So it really worked out well.
I would guess a majority of those kids probably were more in the rural areas as well,
Oh yeah,
probably, right? Lived on
yeah,
farms.
yeah. They were. Yep. Yeah, they were all
Nothing,
farmers.
nothing like
And
getting in
one,
good with your coach by letting him a pheasant hunt on Dad's farm.
that's right. We One of the funniest stories we talked about. These guys that came down from Minnesota always had labs, and we were hunting from one part of northern Guthrie County to about the southern part again, just skipping and going to these spots where we were at. And then the last spot, we were very close to Casey, and one of the dogs got sprayed by a skunk. I don't know if you ever had that opportunity.
Yeah, I've been there, done that.
Oh, that was unbelievable. That was They put that dog in a brand new Suburban, with one of the guys that owned the dog in the Suburban. They could not get rid of that smell, and he had to go up to Minnesota, try to get the smell out, and so got rid of it immediately.
I was going to say
a
that'd be a
joke.
long drive to Minnesota, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So that was one of the funniest. Well, not funny, but it was a tragic but yet funny situation. But those guys were avid hunters. One came from Kansas City, and the other three came from Minneapolis. There were four of them, and they stayed with the banker because the banker's daughter was going to marry one of the guys, and did marry one of the guys. So
Sure.
that's that's uh, that's how basically my son got involved with labs. Um, these guys from Minnesota thought that the lab was the only dog to
Oh yeah.
have,
Yeah,
and
there's some
so
they're a great dog.
uh,
I had a couple of them earlier
yeah.
in my life. Yeah, they're great.
Well,
How old was your son when he kind of went along and kind of got hooked on dogs?
he was probably about 16, I'd say.
Okay.
Um, the first time he shot a bird, we were over by the school, high school. The high school was out in the country, and we were in a field, set aside field, and it had rained, and there was some ice, and it got cold. And he hadn't. I tried and tried to get him a bird all that season, and I think it was the last day of the season. I think he was 17. Um, the last day of the season, my wife's brother, he was a hunter too, and he came out to hunt with me and him, and he had a dog, and the dog pinned a bird in a bramble bush of some type, and he was iced in. He couldn't get out. So he reached in and got the bird, and he said to Bill, he says, "Okay, now, Bill, this is your first chance to get a bird that you know where it's at and where it's going." So he says, "Get ready." And so Bob, my brother-in-law, threw the bird up in the air and he shot it, and that kind of sealed the deal for.
That was it.
That was it. That was the way he got into it big time. And a year later, he bought a dog. Um, his name was Cole, and old Cole was a tremendous hunter. Have all kinds of stories about old Cole.
Well, it's
One,
old Cole. So
one of
what
them.
year would that have
Yep.
been when Cole came into your family?
Bill was a freshman in college, so he was probably 19. Um, he was in college when he did that. So Bill would have been about 18 when he got his first dog,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's had labs ever since. He has two presently, but Cole got him really hooked. He was a good dog. He was a very good dog. He would he'd sniff him out. He'd get him out right in front of you, and man, he would be on him and retrieve it. He was excellent. One day we were north of town in Casey, Iowa, and we shot a bird, and there was a pond there. It was fairly cold, and there was a little ice on the pond, but there was no way that we could go out there and get that bird laying in the middle of that pond. And Bill says, "Fetch," and that dog went over on the ice, came back with the bird. That was one of the amazingest things I've ever seen with old Cole.
He
He
was
was
able
a
to get it.
tremendous
He was
dog.
able to get out there on the ice and get it without
Yeah,
falling through.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He
Yeah.
did.
Now,
And
did Cole live with you most of the time, or did he stay when
yeah,
your son was in college?
Yeah, yeah. He lived with us
Yeah. Yeah.
until he moved out. Let's see, he moved out when he was about 24. So we had Cole for a house guest quite a while. So
So you got a few seasons. You
we,
got a few seasons in with him. It sounds like.
yeah, yeah. Oh God, yes. And he was a big dog. He probably weighed about 100 pounds. He was
Wow.
big, but he was fast. And like I said, he would hunt 8 hours a day, Saturday and Sunday, and want to go on Monday. I don't know, he just had stamina that I couldn't believe. But he was a great dog.
What do you
And
have
he
a favorite
died.
story about him?
Oh,
If
about him, Yeah, I got a real good story.
Okay.
We were hunting over around Colo, Iowa, and I was with a veterinarian. Um, Veterinarian's wife was a school teacher of mine and worked under me. And I asked her about some hunting land. And he says, well, why don't you go with my husband? He likes to hunt. He'll take you hunting. I said, okay. And, so we went over by Colo and we were on birds. And one bird got up and somebody knocked it down. And we were in a kind of a drainage ditch type thing. And Bill says, hey, let's just take a break. And before I should preface this, I told the veterinarian that we had a good dog, not a great dog, but a good dog. And so we knocked this bird down, and Bill says, "Hey, let's take a break. Cole bring that dog back or that bird back." So we sit down and we talk for about 2 minutes, and here come old Cole over the hill with the bird. And the veterinarian says, "I thought you said he was a good dog." I said, "Yeah, he did say that." He says, "Hell, he's a good dog." He said, "You could probably get $3,000 out of that dog." That was his view.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, well, Cole could do things that a
Said
lot
not.
of dogs wouldn't
You
do.
say not for
He
sale.
did. Not for sale.
Not for
No
sale.
money in the world, but yeah, he wouldn't part for that dog for anything.
So
Sad thing was, he died on Christmas Eve.
yeah,
About 3 years later. That was a sad Christmas.
I bet. I
But
bet.
no, he turned around, got another one. He's had several since. He's got two right now that hunt like crazy. So,
So
but the ones get old.
he really got hooked, and
Oh,
he stayed with the
oh
hunting
yeah,
for quite a while then, up until
yeah,
to now.
yeah, yeah. He comes to I. He lives in North Minnesota
Okay.
right now. He lives in up around Hackensack on a lake. He does a little guiding in the summertime, and of course he's a teacher there. And he has two chocolates, and they come to Iowa and hunt every year, and they're good. Once in a while, we'll take them to there's a Bader's pheasant farm in up around Leech Lake on the east side of Leech Lake,
Right.
and we take him up there for a tune-up before he brings them down to Iowa. But they're good dogs too. But no one compares to old Cole. He was a great dog.
Yeah.
Great dog.
When you have that dog like that, it's hard to measure. The
Oh,
ones that follow are a
oh,
little hard for them to measure up sometimes. I don't know.
exactly, exactly. And ironically, my son-in-law, my daughter married a guy, and he hunted with us, and he got a lab, and he's in the labs, but his boys now are hunters, and they have labs, but they're black. They're black females, and they
Okay.
are good hunters. They're pointers, and my grandsons, the two grandsons that go with me now, they like the fact that they point and
Sure.
they know
Yeah. Yeah.
they're not flushing. But when Bill comes and brings his flushers, they know they stand by Bill because Bill will tell them when to get ready because he reads his dogs and
Yep.
he knows when the birds are there. So it's amazing
Yeah.
though. But
My oldest
we
son
would,
had a lab, and he would bring the lab along with my setters, and
yeah,
she had a great nose. So if you ever knocked one down, she was going to find it. But she learned real
yeah,
quickly that I had beeper collars on my dogs, and so when they would go on
oh yeah,
point, the collar would start strobing, beep beep beep, and
yeah,
she figured
yeah,
out real
and
soon that she heard that beep
yeah,
beep going on. She knew there was a bird to be flushed, and here
oh
she would
yeah.
come. So yeah, and as much as he could do to try to stop her, she was coming
She,
like a
oh yeah,
locomotive, and she would put those birds in the
that's
air. But she was
yeah,
smart. She was smart. Great dog. He
yeah,
actually has another one
yeah.
now. So for some reason, I couldn't
Well,
turn him on to setters. He wanted to stay with those labs. So but
yeah. Well, my son was an anti-hunter, and now you couldn't convince him to do anything but hunt on during the season, the pheasant season. He's quite a hunter.
how often do you get out
But
nowadays during the season? How often do you think you
well,
get out?
well, he comes down for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and Once in a while, he'll sneak down just before the season closes. So he'll come down and hunt at least 3 times. And like I said, the grandsons, they have female um, labs that are pointers.
Yeah,
And my
yeah.
grandson, a grandson, the oldest one. He just graduated from Iowa State, and he's an agronomist. And he worked for Heartland in Southwest Iowa. So he knows all these farmers now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we can hunt in Cass County about any place we want
Well, there you
to. So
go.
we got
Perfect.
we got a pretty good gig going
Sounds like
for
it.
hunting.
Sounds like it.
But
Between teachers and
yeah,
other,
yeah,
yeah. That's well.
yeah,
I think the hunting was always the best down there in Southwest Iowa, like you mentioned over the years.
yeah.
Pretty
It's
good up in
over
Northwest,
the
but
years. Yeah, Northwest and Southwest are the two areas. I've never gone up to that area in the Northwest. I've had opportunities, but heck, we had a good situation in the 70s, and now it's gotten better. I mean,
yeah.
mid 90s, it was still kind of rough, but it's gotten much better than what it was in the 80s. It was kind of a struggle there. They had some hailstorms that really hurt a couple years, and that wipes out a lot of chicks and things of that nature. So, but the hunting right now is probably as good as I've seen it in years. Um, just based on when we have gone the last few years.
How what's it like right out there in your area outside of town there where you live? Is it still that's Hardin County,
Oh,
right?
here.
Where you live?
Well, I live in Huxley, which is Story County.
Story County.
I've
Okay.
been,
Okay.
yeah. See, I was school administrator at Ballard of Huxley for
Gotcha.
35 years. So, um, we're close to Iowa Falls. We're 45 minutes to Iowa
Yeah.
Falls, but we do basically all our hunting in Cass County,
Gotcha.
Hardin, and Guthrie. That's our primo go-tos because we know so many people.
Do you get in quail down there? Uh,
Oh yeah,
in today's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Matter of fact, my last hunt, uh, it was over Christmas. And we went to this one farm where we always go turkey hunting, and last spring when I was turkey hunting, I ran into just covey after covey of quail, and I said to my sons and grandsons, and I said we've gotta hunt this particular field for quail. And I'll be darned, we hunted probably, I'm guessing it's 80 acres of set aside timber and creek. Um, and we only ran into one covey of quail. I said, I can't believe this because I said in the spring there were quail all over this place. But we did run into one covey, and I shot once and got three. And my son-in-law says, "Did you just shoot those three quail?" I said, "Yeah, just one shot." I said, "I'm a good shot." I said, What'd you get?" He says, "I only got one." He says, "But you got those with one shot?" I said, "Yeah, because I've got a over and under. I retired my 870 and went to an over and under Weatherby, and so I only have two shots." So I said, "It's up to you guys with all those automatics to shoot them up." So
I tell you, it's
they,
nothing.
they,
Yeah,
go ahead.
there's nothing like a covey of quail flushing to kind of humble a man a little bit,
Oh, it
Boy,
does.
oh my gosh, yeah, yeah. See, I grew up down near Kansas City, and so quail hunting is really all we did. We never had any
Yeah,
pheasants until I moved to Iowa in the late
yeah,
'70s, and and then I saw these big, huge chickens flying in the air, and I thought, man, this can't even be a sport, can it? I mean,
yeah,
and then I found out that the
exactly.
pheasants are a little harder to hit than they look like, when they're and you see them for
When
the
they're
first
wild,
time. Yes, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's if you could get them to fly. That's the big challenge. Is usually
yeah,
get them in the
yeah,
air, but yeah, you get hooked on it pretty quick. There's no doubt about that. But
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of one of those deals. It's great to hear that your son and now your grandsons are really taking up the sport. We've
Yep.
lost so many hunters over the last several
Oh,
years.
yeah.
The
You
DNR
can't
says the
believe.
licenses are way down from what they used to be, and so it's always nice to hear that we have some of the younger generation still wanting to
Yeah,
continue the
yeah,
sport with dogs, with hunting with dogs.
yeah.
So that's great to hear.
Well,
And the fact that
when
they
I
take you along once in a while, that's even better.
oh yeah, they 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 let me go along with them. They need me to do all the talking because I know all the farmers
Uh,
and and all the students. So I get they want to take me because they know
you're the
that
ground
I
getter.
can open up doors. I can open up the doors.
That's a very important. That's a very important job. I'll tell you that. Yeah, and that's really a big
Yeah,
challenge, I think. And it's really the challenge
yeah,
for a lot of new hunters. It's just access to ground. It's just not like it
yeah.
used to be.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It
There's a
is.
lot of no sign. There's no hunting signs posted all over. So you really got to kind of know the lay of the land and to know who the people are and to get in. But there's a lot of birds. Much the numbers are higher than one would really expect if you get in the right areas in Iowa. But they do a count, of course, every spring. You're aware of that, and
Right.
they said it was going to be down, but for us, we didn't see that. We saw the numbers, pretty good. We never came home without birds, so and that's a plus. That's a
So
plus. But I could,
looking back, what was it about pheasant hunting? I guess that kind of just got you. I mean, you got hooked on it, and when you're trying to
yeah,
describe what pheasant hunting really means to a lot of us up here that have spent years, chasing dogs and fields. How would you describe that? I mean, what was it about pheasant hunting that just really gave you the
well,
passion to keep
well,
going?
number one, it's kind of a challenge. I mean, you got to you got to find them. You got to you got to get permission to be on land, and it's kind of a challenge. But I just love watching the dogs work. I could
Yeah,
go and not even take my gun and enjoy just watching the dog.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
I think that's the great thing is when I first started hunting, like we were in high school, road hunting. We never thought about having a dog. Ed had a dog that was a house dog that once in a while I think it was an Irish setter that would sneak out of the house and go with him once in a while
Right.
on the railroad train. But that was the only you know, dog other than my uncle's Vizsla, and he moved away when I was junior high. So he never came around that much. So as time progressed, we all got together and road hunted, and then we got together when we were in college. Periodically, we'd hunt, and it just was a fun time, and it was just a great time to be out in the field and get some exercise and watch the dogs. It was just the way it was.
What
Still is.
since you know that they're going to be listening to this, do you have any good stories about Ed and or Bob? Uh,
Well,
shots made or
I got a
shots
good.
missed. Do you have any good stories about those two guys that you'd like to relate?
Well, you know, I think the ironic thing is these guys we're getting older, so we can jostle each other and make fun of each other if we do whiff and make a bad shot. But now think I'm thinking back. The funniest thing I can remember with those guys when we were road hunting is when the bird got loose in the car and we were trying to catch a bird. I think that was probably my highlight of hunting with those guys as being things to remember. I think one time when I was hunting with Ed um, south of Casey, which would be Guthrie County, we were in a cornfield, walking a cornfield. We didn't have dogs at that time because it was just Ed and I, and we were going along in this cornfield, and there were more weeds than there was corn. And all of a sudden, the birds came flying up, you know, flying, couldn't believe it. So I shot twice, got two birds. That guy, he shot three times and got three birds.
Oh my!
So, yeah. But Ed's philosophy when he started hunting with Bill, he's hunted with my son a couple of times. His philosophy was there's two kinds of soldiers. There's the quick, and then there's the dead. And if you want to be a hunter, You gotta be quick.
Spoken like a
There's
man
your
that spent a lot of time in the Army like he did.
yeah, he was in the Army, so
Oh, yeah.
he that was his expression.
Shoot
There's two
quick or
kinds of
die.
guys. Yeah, the quick or the dead. He says you
Gosh.
got to be quick. And I'm telling you, he was intense when he got his boots on and his gun in his hand. He carried the gun in a place where he was ready at all
He
times.
was pretty serious.
He was good. Yeah, he was good. He's very good. But
Yeah, he was a lot of
you
fun to
know,
talk to.
yeah, he's a good person, very good person.
Well, like I said, we're
And
trying to get him to come back to Iowa and hunt one more time, for
I've told him that many times.
yeah,
He's always welcome.
well,
But
maybe we can convince
he's
him to do it.
yeah, yeah,
It's
he's
always
good.
fun to, and like you said, getting birds and limiting and all that. I forgot all about that many years ago, and that doesn't really,
Yeah,
it's not my concern anymore. I'm more into, I like to find birds because I like to give my dogs an opportunity to work them,
sure. Work.
and if
Do the
if
thing.
somebody that's with me knocks a bird down, they can get a good retrieve, but the days of a lot of those guys that were all about getting a limit and that they had to get a limit. I mean, you get to be our
No,
age, and it's
that's
more
not
about just getting out there and being able to physically being able to be
exactly.
out there and walking in the field and getting to see the
Yeah,
old dog
yeah,
work, and that means a lot.
yeah. Well, I'm getting up there, but I still try to keep up with them. But I'm kind of choosy of where we hunt nowadays. That I
Yeah,
don't like the
yeah,
hills and the weeds over your head and all that stuff. I said, you guys can do that. I'll take the easy hunts and I'll stay up with you. But if you guys are going to go into the jungles and stuff, just count me out.
yeah. Those days are over for me. With my knees and stuff, it's kind of like I'm like you. You got to kind of pick your battles
Yeah.
and
Yep.
let
Yep.
you young guys go in there and beat the birds out to me. Maybe that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Sometimes I post a little bit, but
yeah,
most of the time I'm with them. But when they go in that stuff, it's oh man, that we call it the jungle. I said, if you're going to the jungle, count me out. You can't see the dogs. You can hear the dogs and you hear the birds flashing up, but you can't see a darn thing. So
I always thought
I said,
labs were perfect for that kind of. In South Dakota, we got into they had drought, and we got into this huge section area, and it had been all cattails, in water, but
yeah,
the water was gone, and that's where all the birds went. They were in those
oh
cattails,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's where I saw the labs do their work. They were in there crashing through, and birds were
oh yeah,
flowing out, boiling out of there. But you had to get in there to get them out. I mean,
yeah. That's right.
my sons, they got in there and crashing around. I felt bad, but not that bad about them being in there and me being on the outside.
That's right. Yeah.
you know,
Well, they went there this year, and I set that one out. I said, uh, I'm just going to set that one out. I don't need my knee to flare up or
yeah.
get worse than it already is. So I'm kind of
Well,
cautious.
I'll tell you what. I know I don't want to take up your whole evening, but I sure have had fun spending a little
Yeah.
time with you, Steve, and reminiscing about some of the good old days of pheasant hunting. Hopefully, there'll be
And
many more to come. And
I hope so.
yeah, and
I
it's kind of like old pheasant hunters, you just got to keep getting out there. And I do some guiding at a preserve over here by Iowa City, and
oh yeah.
because of my
Okay.
age, I typically get the older guys
Good
that
for
are
you.
more my pace. But I will say, I had a guy that was 83 not just before Christmas, and
'83.
God
I hope
bless
I
him.
can do that in
God
83.
bless him. He had some physical challenges. He didn't walk, he
Fast.
too good or fast, but
Yeah.
we were able to,
Gave a bird.
with my dogs, we were able to kind of manipulate them in a way where we were able to get birds in a position where he got to walk in
Yeah. Shot.
on a couple points. He got 3 birds one day,
Did
and
you really?
yes,
Good
he
for
did.
him.
He's a good shot if he gets the opportunity. It's all about getting the opportunity. Of course, I took most of the credit that I was me that got him, got the dogs in the right
Yeah.
position to get him the
Exactly.
shots. But no, he was a good
Exactly.
shot. It was going to be his last trip to Iowa to hunt, and his
Oh
nephew,
really?
his younger nephew, was with him, and I got to say that after that hunt, he did get to gloat a little bit because he got more birds than the nephew did, who's a lot younger than him.
Oh, that's
So he had to rub it
fantastic.
in.
That's fantastic.
But I got an email from him the other day, and he says he's coming back next fall. He's going to do it again. So
One more shot.
yeah,
Oh, that's
so that.
fantastic.
But so that's cool. If you to see guys
Oh,
that age that are still out there because they love the sport and they love the dogs and they want to get out there
oh
as long as
gosh,
they
yes.
can, and that just gives me a little more inspiration to keep going as well.
This episode brought to you by way of our sponsors, Highland Hideaway Hunting Preserve in Riverside, Iowa. With over 1,500 acres of meticulously managed and maintained preserve. Book your hunt today at highlandhunting.com. And Interstate Grain Service. Family owned since 1981, we offer personalized service with product and feed knowledge. Competitive pricing on numerous brands including Purina, Nutrina, Kinetic, and Diamond. Stop in today at our retail location off I-380 in Center Point, Iowa. And Kinetic Performance Dog Food. Kinetic's line of premium dry food and supplements provides clean, sustainable energy for everyday active, sporting, and working dogs. Visit kineticdogfood.com for details.